This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of modern Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here is your host, Rabbi Tuvia Teldin.
Today we live in a very tumultuous time. It's a very difficult time for many people, whether it be financially, whether it be because of the situation that we have in the world at large. And as a result, we find that our very nature is changed on a daily basis. And we're dealing with emotions and feelings and reactions that perhaps back in the 90s maybe we didn't experience. Why is that? Because when the world seems to be a little more tipsy-turvy, we ourselves react in a tipsy-turvy way. And it rocks our security. It rocks our sense of a foundation in life. It rocks our sense of really being secure in who and what we are, the world around us, and everything we know to be true. And as a result, this is something that requires a lot of introspection. And it requires a little bit of really thinking about, well, what makes me tick? And what makes the world tick? And why does the way I tick have to be so dependent on the way the world ticks? So I hope you'll stay with us for the next half hour, because we have with us a very, very interesting guest, a wonderful rabbi in Long Island. His name is Rabbi Shalom Moshe Paltiel. He's accomplished tremendous amounts in the Port Washington area of Long Island. And it's a pleasure to have Rabbi Paltiel with us on the Jewish Spotlight. Rabbi Paltiel, Shalom, and welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Can you just tell us in a couple of minutes what you're doing in Port Washington? I really know there are so many people who admire the work they're doing there, and you've accomplished so much in the years you've been there. If you could share with us, just for those people who might be within a 5-10 minute radius of where you are, they'd like to come by and see what you're doing, I think it would be very nice to share with people what you're all about over there.
We've set up a beautiful Chabad center with a very active synagogue that gets over 100 people on an average Shabbat.
Fantastic.
And the beauty is it's people from all walks of life, you name it, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, unaffiliated Jews, and everybody feels comfortable and welcome. And it's become a home away from home for every kind of Jew to feel at home. Additionally, our biggest project is a day school, which we've created for children also from all backgrounds, and it's fast becoming an excellent educational institution and growing rapidly.
Wonderful. I know a lot of the credit goes to you and your wife, Sarah, who have done such an incredible job taking the teachings and the blessings of the Lubavitch Rebbe and really making them a reality in Port Washington. So I hope you keep up the good work.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Getting back to our topic, why do you think people feel so insecure today? Why are they so worried?
That's an excellent question. And, you know, we can contemplate the answer to the question. I know that's certainly the case. I know that while in the past people had a feeling of security and a feeling of America is untouchable. You know, the feeling in America was that if only, God would keep Greenspan healthy and wise, all would be okay. And since 9/11, to a great degree, that's changed. The average successful American person is concerned. They're concerned about the stock market, about smallpox, about, God forbid, Al-Qaeda attacks. Even the way we open our mail is different today. It's a whole new world. Add to that the news we get from Israel and around the world, and people all of a sudden are feeling a vulnerability and insecurity. And I think if there's one thing people are looking for more than anything today, it's to regain that sense of security. Okay, I don't know if things really changed all that much since 9/11. I think before that, the world was never really a secure place, but certainly our perception changed. And
so, in your opinion, how do we find true security? Is that possible? Is it attainable to have true security?
Well, I think that's the question. I think the question is not how do we find security, but is true security really possible? Or to phrase the question differently, did God, the Creator, intend for us to be living an existence of total security?
Okay, that definitely makes it a bigger question.
Right, because if God intended us to be living in a feeling of total security and self-sufficiency, that plan certainly failed. A person can live a storybook life, have all the money in the world, health and wealth and everything that life has to offer, and then, God forbid, in one day a tragedy comes along and turns the whole thing on its head. So it doesn't seem that God's plan was for us to be living a totally secure existence. I believe from the teachings of Torah and the teachings of Hasidus, we find that, in fact, God did not intend us to live totally secure existences. We're meant to be, so to speak, vulnerable to God. We find this in the Torah. The Jewish people are coming out of Egypt. They're hungry. They have nothing to eat. God says, every morning bread's going to fall from heaven. Go out and collect a ration for the day.
Right.
the Torah strictly forbade them from collecting enough food for 2 days.
Right.
They couldn't go out shopping for manna for a week or a month. They had to go each day.
No savings accounts.
No savings. And the Torah explains that the reason for this was, according to the commentaries, was that each day the Jew had to go out and turn their head up heavenward and say, Almighty God, Father in heaven, give me something to eat. It created a relationship on a daily basis that they needed God. And similarly, that's the way God created we're not meant. The fact that human insecurity is not an accident, it's by design. The feeling of human insecurity is actually a sign of faith, that I recognize that I'm not the creator, I'm not God, I'm not in control. But it's good to know that somebody else is.
You know, it's interesting because you're touching on a point here about the fact that this is an imperfect world, because the imperfection is not only in the sense that it's imperfect in our lack of security, but it's imperfect in many, many ways. Insecurity being one of them. And of course the Torah, as we know, teaches that yes, God deliberately created an imperfect world, although God's a perfect world, but he did it for the purpose of us as his partners in creation, having the schus, the merit, the opportunity, the challenge, and the great role, the possibility of being a partner with God in the process of trying to perfect it. So perhaps what you're referring to also is that this lack of security that we have is really part of that process, that we are meant to work on our own sense of insecurity, to build an innermost security, to be part of that process of trying to perfect our inner world as well. And maybe that's one of the ways to try to accomplish security.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, some people are afraid to fly in airplanes, and even though flying an airplane is still considered to be the safest means of travel, and yet some people don't like it because they're not in control, and they're not. But you fly the airplane and you recognize there's a captain that is in control. I think that's the story of our daily lives. We are not in control. We don't know what will happen next week or tomorrow.
Well, one second. First of all, how does a person come to grips with that? Because that's a very heavy statement for a person to come to grips with. And how does a person function if they really would feel that they're not in control? Because we know that in our society, so many people are trying to be in control of their lives, be in control of their destiny, whether it be through their money, whether it be through their efforts in so many ways. How do people live with that?
Well, you know, using the analogy of the airplane, put on your seatbelt, sit back, and know and trust that there is a good pilot in control, namely God, and God's a darn good pilot. Our Torah tells a beautiful story in the Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, a great sage who lived till 120 years old, and he surrounded by his students on his deathbed, and they say, you know, Rabbi, tell us words of wisdom we can live with for the rest of our lives. And he looks at his students, and they were expecting some Kabbalistic, mystical message. After all, if he was 120, the students were probably in their late 90s, you know, wise rabbis. And instead, he said something very simple to them. He says, I pray that you should feel the presence of God in your lives as much as you feel the presence of human beings. And they said, Rabbi, is that the whole message? And he said, yes. He says, you know, when another human being is in the room, we feel their presence in a very real way. We behave differently. There are certain things we just won't do because they're inappropriate when another person is there. He said, I would like you to feel God's presence in that fashion. Not that God is somewhere in heaven and he exists and he's great and he runs the whole world, but that God is in the room with you. So certainly you won't do certain things that are inappropriate. More importantly, you'll feel a total sense of security all the time, that God is real. I think every one of us, by and large, has faith, and yet we're worried because what we need to do is turn faith into trust. Okay, it's right on the money. In God we trust.
It's a big step.
It's a huge step. It's not just
Please explain
faith.
that. What is the difference between faith and trust? Because I think it's a very important point, and not too many people stop really to think about it.
Yes, because faith could be, you know, I believe in God, he's out there, but does he know my name? Does he worry about where my next paycheck is coming from, or my children's health, or what have you?
Can I trust God the way I would trust a good friend or trust a member of the family?
Right? And trust means it's real. You know, God is in the room in a very real way. As Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to the students, God should be as real to you as a fellow human being would be. And I learned this lesson, believe it or not, from my little daughter. Okay, she was 4 years old at the time, or 5 years old at the time. And she had a problem. She was afraid to go to sleep at night because she was afraid of the dark. She was afraid that bad guys are going to come, and it became a real problem. We had to leave the light on. She wouldn't fall asleep. Problem. The problem resolved itself one day. We're driving in the car, and she's sitting in the back seat, and I'm in the front. I'm distracted. I'm on the phone, whatever. And there's a children's tape playing, Jewish music, and the singer is singing a song that says, Hashem, God, lives with me inside my room. It's a well-known Jewish song. And all of a sudden, my little Mushka in the back seat starts giggling and laughing, and she says, Tati, you know, Daddy, did you hear what he said? God lives in my room. And I have nothing to worry about because the bad guys can't come because God is there. And I'm on the phone with my wife, with Sarah, and Mushka grabs the phone, you know, and she's in the back seat, and she says, she tells the whole thing over, Mommy, you know, I just found out I have nothing to worry about. And from that day, there was no issue. And I said to myself, isn't that beautiful? The way a child has total trust and faith in God. And I said, perhaps that's what 9/11 is challenging every one of us. We realize that we're like the little child. We have no clue. We have no control whatsoever. And anyone with a half a brain knows that. And yet, God says, be like the child. God is in your room. You got nothing to worry about. You know, the Maggid of Mezrich said the child teaches us three things. They're always busy, they're always happy, and they always trust. Meaning if they have a complaint, they cry. And we have to be in that fashion like that child, you know, to know that God is taking care and to throw our trust in God. And that's the only security we're going to find.
So you're saying that God really designed the world in such a way that security should be unattainable in order that we should develop this sense of trust. That really is the purpose for it. Yes?
Right.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story I'll share with you. I heard a cute story about a great rabbi who had his gabbai, his assistant. And at 6 o'clock every single night, the assistant would bring him dinner. And just minutes before he would come out of the kitchen, the Rabbi would say, God Almighty, please send me my meal for this evening. And he would pray for a minute, and then the gabbai was told that his schedule is to come in exactly at that time in order to bring the meal. And he would say, thank God for bringing me my daily food. Put it down, and he would start eating. So the gabbai, the assistant, after a number of years of doing this, felt a little resentful. He never got a thank you. What's going on here? He's always thanking God. He's never thanking me for preparing the food. So he decides he's going to, one day, he's not going to present dinner. The rabbi is going to stand there. He's going to pray for a meal, and he's not going to bring it in. So let him pray. What happens? The day finally comes. And that morning, a man comes to the door, and he says, Rabbi, I need a blessing. My wife is in labor. Can you please help me out? So the rabbi gives him a special blessing that it should be an easy delivery and should be a healthy baby and everything should be fine. Good, and the man continues on his way, and many other things happen during the course of the day. 6 o'clock comes. The rabbi starts, he prays a minute to 6 that his meal should come. The gabbai, the assistant, is standing behind the kitchen door, just waiting for the moment that the rabbi is going to realize that it's really him that's bringing the food and not God who's delivering the food. What happens? At 6 o'clock sharp, the front door, there's a knock on the door, and this man who this morning had asked for a blessing comes in with a big tray of food and says, Rabbi, my wife had an easy labor and she had a beautiful baby, a healthy baby, and we're so thankful to you. Here's a little bit of a gift for you. We want to show you a token of appreciation. The assistant got the message that really he is a messenger for God also, that when we receive things in our world, whatever it might be, from the smallest things to the greatest things, there's a reason, there's a purpose, there's something going on here behind the surface that we might not be privy to. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But the security, as I think you're pointing out, is something that has to come from within. It has to come from a person's innermost relationship with God, from the certain trust that they feel. And just feeling secure because I have a lot of money in account, or I have a big house, or I have a gun, or I have whatever it might be, yes, those are all maybe very helpful, and they prop up our sense of security, but they're not the real security that your 4-year-old daughter accomplished when she realized that God was with her in the room.
Right. I also think, God perhaps could have created us, certainly could have created us differently. I don't know how the angels feel. I don't know that they have to worry about daily security the way we do. So God certainly could have created us in a fashion of security. We got no worries. We don't worry about making a living. We don't worry about our families.
And that's probably the way it was in the Garden of Eden.
Exactly, and the way it will be speedily when Mashiach comes.
God willing.
Why did God do this? And I believe from my studies of Kabbalah and from the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, God chose to design our world in a fashion that we are vulnerable to God precisely because God loves us, because God wanted a relationship with us. You have relationships where a real relationship is where two are interdependent and dependent upon one another. In a marriage, the two are connected with one another. Now you have other relationships, perhaps, let's say you're business partners, okay? And you might be doing very well, but each partner might be thinking, I can't wait for the day when I'm successful enough and I buy you out and I'm on my own. I don't really want you. I'm only there because of what I get from the relationship. So the day comes and this partner is successful enough and he buys himself out. So a person might say the same thing in a marriage, I gave my wife a checkbook, a credit card, let her go shopping and leave me alone. No, she wants him to come along and choose the couch and choose the paint for the living room or whatever because she wants a relationship. It's a marriage. It's not a partnership. So when we turn to God, and I think often we do this as Americans, we all thank God for our blessings. Say, God, you know, you've been a great partner. You gave me life. You gave me health. You gave me intelligence. You gave me ability to be successful. And now, you know, I'm on my own. I'm doing okay. I'm going to buy you out. Says God, no. Each and every day you're going to need the security. You're going to need to turn up to God. And as you say goodbye to your children, say, God, protect my kids. Take care of my 401k, whatever. Give me a good day. Give me a good week. Give me a good year. So that it becomes a real relationship. Mm-hmm. You know, the Medrash, which is Jewish ancient literature, tells us that there was a king who had two sons, a good son and not so good son. And the not so good son who misbehaved, who had no future, the king hired one of his ministers for him. And he said, you know, take care of this son. Give him whatever he wants, horses, palaces, money, gold, silver. Keep him busy. Keep him out of my hair. For the second prince that he loved, you know, the crown prince, whom he saw great potential, he called him into his private royal chambers. He sat him on his lap, and he said, son, he said, whatever you want is yours. I just have one request. If you want something, ask for it. Because I want a relationship. I want to know what your wants and desires are. I want to know the direction of your life. Mm-hmm. That's what God wants from us, like the heavenly bread. Each and every day, turn to God and say, God, give me a good day. Give me a good week. Give me health. Give me wealth. Give us security.
So you're talking about prayer, really.
Exactly. And the way to turn that faith into trust is by making it a daily prayer, a daily connectivity, so that God is not just the God of the heavens, but God is in the room. God becomes part of our lives.
What do you say to somebody who's very uncomfortable praying for the very practical little things in their life, the small little things, day-to-day needs that they feel are too mundane to really bother God about? What do you say to such a person?
Maimonides, the great philosopher, writes that we're supposed to pray for anything that we really want. So if he doesn't want these things, he shouldn't pray for them. But if he wants them, by all means.
I would assume that's part of the relationship.
Absolutely. That means that this is a real connection. He really believes that God is going to worry about the little things as much as the big things.
Which is a basic part of Jewish belief.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. We say in the Torah and in Deuteronomy, one of the major mistakes that a human being can make is when they feel that my success and my fame, my accomplishments, whatever they might be, my control, my security, are all because of my own power and my own strength. And this is one of the first steps that a person takes on the road to really losing touch with God. Because when we feel that there's no partnership and I'm on my own and I can do whatever I can do and I don't need a partner in this, I bought a mat, as you said, then that's the beginning of the end to a certain degree. So it's a very, very interesting point. So how do you explain 9/11 to somebody? What do you say? How do you talk to a person? Not in terms of necessarily the bigger issues, but concerning the specific issue of security. How does a person deal with that after 9/11?
You know, it's like I said, bringing God into your life on a daily basis. There's a beautiful anecdote where it speaks of the snake, the original snake with Adam and Eve. Okay, and the snake brought all the troubles of history according to the Bible. The snake was punished. What was his terrible punishment? That you'll eat dust for the rest of its life. Mm-hmm. And the obvious question, how is that a punishment? If he's eating dust, he'll never run out of dust. There's plenty of dust. So Hasidic thought says, that's precisely his punishment. God said, you know, you'll eat dust. You'll always have what to eat. You'll never have to pick up your snake's head to the heaven and be in a relationship with God and say, God, help me. That's the life of a snake. I don't need anybody. I'm on my own. No relationship whatsoever. No connection to anyone. The life of a human being, of a soul, on the other hand, is not of the snake. The punishment to Adam and Eve was you're going to struggle, you'll work hard, and you'll pray, and you'll need a connection. So it was actually the greatest reward.
Interesting.
So that if 9/11, I believe, and again, nobody's going to try to rationalize 9/11, but 9/11, the way I think God wants us to take it, and the way, in a great degree, America has turned to God. I mean, the amazing irony, 9/11, the atrocities on 9/11 were all done in the name of religion, and yet America automatically turned to God. And obviously we realize that we're talking about a God of peace and love and not a God of murder. But to turn to God and take the challenge of 9/11, to say, I realize I'm vulnerable. I'm not a snake. I'm not on my own. But thank God I can turn to God. I have a captain. I have a father in heaven. I have a mother in heaven who gives me life and sustenance, who's taking care of my family, and I pray for the next day.
It's interesting also, you referred to it a little bit in terms of people who do go through tragedy or loss or some type of failure in their life, how these are the people sometimes who are brought closer to God as a result of it. Because these are the people who start to realize, there's something more to life than just being in control of your life. Just like you say, being the snake, or just feeling that I have control of everything. Because sometimes people look at older people who start to come closer to God in their 60s and 70s and 80s. They say, they're just getting ready for the next stage in life. They're starting to return to God. And it's really a very condescending way of looking at it. To the contrary, I think another way of looking at it is that a person is getting to the point of maturity in life, of understanding the nature of life, the ups and downs of life, the superficial nature of many things that we think are give us a sense of security, and realize there's a nature behind it which is godly, which is spiritual. And that's why it takes that kind of maturity to get to the point where you connect to it. It's not because they're preparing for the next world, it's because they really have grown in wisdom as far as understanding many of these points that you're referring to.
Yes.
So it's a very important part of an individual's maturity. Some people experience that, unfortunately, due to tragedy, due to failures or different situations they face younger in life, where they realize that having things and in collecting things and owning a lot of toys is not necessarily what it's all about. And I'm sure you've met many people in your experience, even though you live in an affluent area, but many people who have to go through difficult times in life to realize what true wealth is and what it means to truly be able to be happy in life. It doesn't happen as a result of just collecting items, as it says in Pirkei Avos, in Ethics of the Fathers. Who is a truly wealthy person? Hasamech bechalko, a person who rejoices in their lot, who is able to be happy with what God has granted them.
If I can share with you on this subject, you see sometimes people who have so much and they don't find joy, and some people who have nothing and they're full of happiness. One of my mentors growing up in yeshiva and rabbinical college was an individual who made a great impact on my life, a truly great human being. He was an elderly chassid, if you will, who spent most of his life in Russia. He spent a number of years in prison for teaching Torah at the time. And he had many children, and he had to marry them off, etc. And yet, he was never worried. We would look at him, we would marvel. The happiest guy in the world. He suffered, he went through everything, never had a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And we would ask him, why aren't you worried? You got to marry off these kids, you got so much obligation to worry about. And he would answer us, he said, I should worry. He said, I ran away from the Nazis, I never thought I'd survive, God help me. I smuggled myself out of Russia to Israel, and I got caught. They gave me 25 years in Soviet prison. I never thought I'd survive it. After 7 years, I was freed, and I was fine. I'm in Russia in the 60s. I never thought I'd find a religious woman that I could make a Jewish home with. I found the perfect wife. I never thought I'd get beyond the Iron Curtain. I made it to Israel and then to America. We have beautiful children, healthy, happy, emotionally, physically, wonderful. So I should worry? Mm-hmm. He says, let God do the worrying. He's been doing it all along. And I looked at him and I said, this is unbelievable. And you're right. Sometimes growing up in a beautiful, free country, and this is a beautiful, blessed country, you have all the things that you want, and you take things for granted. But when you realize, 9/11 wakes us up and says, hey, let God do the worrying. Let's stop worrying. We've made worry into a sport.
Definitely. It's unbelievable.
They say the Jewish mother sends a telegram. It's 5 words. She says, start worrying. Details to follow. We almost think it's a Jewish thing. And I tell my people, I said, it's not a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish thing to have faith and trust and a feeling of security, knowing that God is in charge. And with God's help, things will work out in the best possible way that they can.
It's like kvetching also. I tell people, because they come to me, they ask when they read the parsha of the Torah concerning how the Jews are constantly complaining in the desert. Constantly, whatever it might be. And they just saw these miracles. They just received the Torah from Mount Sinai. They're receiving the manna every single day. Miracles after miracles. And what do? They kvetch. How can that be? So I say to them, listen, let me tell you something. If a person is living in a very affluent area, let's say of Long Island, do you think that this person, because they're living there, and because somebody who's not in an affluent area of the city looks at their life and says, this person has everything, they have no right to be unhappy, they have no right to feel insecure, no right to kvetch whatsoever. Do you think that, therefore, it takes away the ability of the person in the affluent area to be able to kvetch? No, because it's part of human nature. You could be the wealthiest person, the poorest person. You could all be kvetchers. We could all have this sense of security or insecurity. It all depends on like as you say so well, trust. The inner trust that a person has within to be able to have that relationship with God and realize no matter where they're going through life, they have that light that's guiding them, and through thick or thin, the storm might be all around them, but they know that they're going to be able to go through in a peaceful way. But the real challenge for, I'm sure, people who are looking at this is, Rabbi, tell us something about how to internalize that. How does a person really make that a part of life? What are your parting words to our audience as far as how to really be one with that?
How to make how to get the feeling that God is in the room.
Okay.
I think the only answer is prayer. And this is certainly part of the Jewish faith, and I believe it's part of any faith, that we should pray to God on a daily basis.
Which means having a conversation, to talk, just like you would talk to a person, to a friend, to a confidant.
Right? People, used to ask the question, pre 9/11, why pray every day? Let me pray on Yom Kippur or once a week. But I think we realize today we need a daily interaction, even if all is well. Before we get onto that train, before we go to work, turn to God, and say, God, give me a good day. Have a personal moment. We say the Shema, we cover our eyes with our right hand in the Jewish tradition, which represents basically the words of the Shema are that God is real, that God is relevant. He's in the room with us. And we cover our eyes, meaning that there is no other reality at the moment except for God and ourselves, so that God must be worrying about me and taking care of me. And it gives us a sense of security for the day.
And we can talk to God as a partner almost, saying, listen, I need your help. Together we can make this happen, and I want to make it happen. I want to be able to do what you want me to do, but I need you to be part of it.
And the Kabbalah says, by the way, not only does God make us vulnerable to God so that we have a relationship with God, God made himself also, so to speak, vulnerable to a human being. And that's why God asked us to do mitzvahs, to give charity, to be a good person, whatever it is, to keep Shabbat, to do all these mitzvahs, because God wanted a relationship with us both ways.
Very nice. Well, Rabbi Paltiel, I want to thank you very much for being with us. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, can you tell everybody what your phone number is?
My phone number is an easy number. It's area code 516-767-TORAH.
Okay. That's 767-TORAH, T-O-R-A, or 8672, I believe.
Right.
Great. So if anybody wants to get in touch with Rabbi Paltiel, find out about his synagogue, his wonderful school, any activities that he and his wife are leading in the Port Washington, Sands Point area. It's really very, very exciting what's going on there. And just to go by and have a tour of the building is in itself an experience to see what's been accomplished. So I want to thank you very much. I just want to add on a little point to what Rabbi Paltiel is saying. Sometimes people hear about prayer, they hear about trust, they hear about these words, and they're foreign words. They're words they didn't necessarily grow up with. They're words that people feel are like becoming a holy roller or becoming religious. You have to be religious to do that. But it's something that every single individual can really feel part of. Every person can internalize in your life. You don't have to tell a soul. You don't have to tell anybody. Just open up. Just wake up in the morning. We say the first thing in the morning, Moda ani lefanecha. I say before you, God, that I thank you for returning my soul. And many people go to the Rebbe's gravesite, to the Ohel, which is a very holy place, a tremendous, powerful place of prayer at the Olmat Tefillah Cemetery. Unbelievable place to pray and to pour out your heart to God. And it works, and it's been documented, and it's really incredible. So let's everybody go out there, internalize that trust. Thank you very much, Rabbi Paltiel. Best of hatzlacha to you and to your family. In the meantime, we'll see you next week in the Jewish Spotlight. Go out there and do something good and make your world and your community a better place. Shalom.